Thanks, Felicia. Thank you, Felicia. Thanks for all the introductions. And like Felicia said, this is Liquid Sculpey 101. So I'm going to do the very best that I can to give you simple step-by-step processes for getting started with Liquid Sculpey, especially if you've never used it. We welcome you to ask questions in the comment or the chat or whatever we're calling it. Just type your questions in there. My boss Jen is here helping monitor the questions. We'll be sure to answer as quickly as possible. So just to introduce you to Liquid Sculpey, let's go to the overhead camera, and I'm going to show you what it looks like and how to get started. So Liquid Sculpey, when you see it at Michael's, comes in these little 1 ounce bottles. There's lots of different colors and lots of different finishes. And for example, I've got a little display set up here. This is representative of some of the metallic colors here in the front. They've got a lot of mica in them and they're really rich and pretty. Over here, I've got some translucent colors, including glow in the dark, which is super awesome. It really glows nicely. And also this is our clear. It's really clear. It's the clearest liquid polymer on the market. So that's the translucence, including the clear. Over here, I've got some of our matte colors like black, red, and white. We have way more colors than this, but I wanted you to be able to see the different styles of finishes that we offer. To get started with Liquid Sculpey, all Liquid Sculpey needs to be stirred before you use it. So I just want to give you a little rundown on how to do that. This is the garnet metallic. It's a really deep, rich red. It looks kind of like this when it's baked. It's got sparkles in it too. And what I like to do is just take, this is a knitting needle, and just dip it all the way to the bottom, take that lid completely off, dip all the way to the bottom, and get down in there and stir. Now, this is what I call my dip and drip technique. And the reason I dip and drip is I kind of take a visual note of how quickly my liquid is running back off the knitting needle into the Liquid Sculpey bottle. Liquid Sculpey does have a tendency to advance over time, which just means it'll get a little bit thicker. And when you're using multiple colors in one project, it's important that all of your colors are the same thickness. So this garnet metallic is really good to go. It's nice. It ran right off the needle as I pulled it away. In contrast to this amber translucent, I want to show you, it's quite a bit thicker. So I'm going to go in here with my knitting needle and stir it up. Stir and stir and stir. And when I pull the needle out, it is really moving quite slowly off the needle. And maybe it's hard to see that from an overhead camera, but I can feel it. It's just a totally different consistency. And so what I want to do is I want to thin this one just a bit. So I'm going to talk about thinning, because as I said earlier, if your Liquid Sculpeys advance a bit with time, this is an important trick to know anyway. This is our Sculpey clay softener and thinner. It also comes in a 1 ounce bottle, and you just open up that adjustable lid and squirt a few drops. I'm gonna go for about 6 drops because this is a whole new 1 ounce bottle, and I'll stir that in completely before I go any further. So I'll stir and stir and stir. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my dip and drip technique again and see how far along I got with thinning it. And I can tell already that it's quite a bit thinner, but I'm going to go a little bit more because of the technique I'm going to show you later in the class. I want this to be a bit thinner. So don't ever thin them until you're ready to use them, because there are also applications where having thick Liquid Sculpey is super ideal. And we're going to talk about that in this class as well. So I never thin them until I'm absolutely ready. I let them be as they are in their bottle, and I approach them accordingly depending on what project I'm doing. So today we're going to look at lots of ways to use Liquid Sculpey. We're going to see how to use it in molds. We're going to look at some best practices. We're going to look at how to make window clings and how to use Liquid Sculpey with other oven baked clays. And we're just going to try all of this together. So that's my amber translucent. That one is also good to go. Now we're also going to look at stirring clear liquid Sculpey because it's completely a different animal. Clear liquid Sculpey has the ability to go super clear like this. If I'll hold it over the napkin and then I'll hold it over here and I'll hold it over my knitting needle. And this is really, really clear. It's got little embedded Christmas candies that I made out of polymer clay in the clear. And so this was to be made as a Christmas ornament, but it is super clear. You can see my hand right through it. And so because clear liquid Sculpey has this magical quality to go completely clear, it's a little bit different in the bottle. And so when I reach down in there with my knitting needle, it actually feels quite lumpy in there. And this is natural for clear liquid Sculpey to do that. But what I want to talk about is working that out. If I pull my knitting needle out, you can actually see some really thick spots on the needle. And it's almost like it kind of separates itself in the bottle. And that's fine. That happens naturally. What I'm going to do right now is bump myself up to a heavier knitting needle so I can get right in there. I'm going to put all this back in the bottle that I dripped out because I got kind of sloppy. And so don't be alarmed. When you use clear liquid Sculpey, it's going to have some lumps and bumps in it. And what you need to do is get those worked back in. In my own studio at home, I have these little silicone cupcake liners. And a lot of times I will just dump my clear liquid Sculpey completely out into the liner so that I can see what I'm dealing with and I can get all those lumps and bumps worked back in. And that is totally fair game. Once I do that and I decant it into a liner like that, I don't ever put it back in the little bottle. I just leave it out. I stir it every time I use it. And if I want to, I'll go ahead and thin it with some of this same thinner that we used before. And I'll put some of that in there, or I might squirt it in the cup. And then I'll just see it start to thin. So anyway, that is the story on clear liquid Sculpey. You might be tempted to be alarmed because you think, oh, it's lumpy and it's gone bad, but it hasn't. It's just sort of I can't really call it a two-part, but it's sort of its own specific thing, and it wants to separate once it's been sitting around. And the only way around that is to just get in there and use it. Use it every day and get going with it. So all right, that's the story on stirring. All the liquids need stirred, and any liquids you see me use today that I don't stir on camera, that's because I've already stirred them off camera. I took time before the class started to make sure they were all stirred and checked, and so they're all good to go. Okay, so first let's talk about molding. There's lots and lots of molds on the market that you can use. Sculpey, we have our own line of molds, but any silicone mold that's out there is fair game. Silicone molds can go in your oven, and they can usually take a heat way up over 400 degrees. And for liquid Sculpey, we just bake at 275. So any silicone molds that you find in, let's say, fondant molds, let's say ice cube trays like this one. This is also an ice cube tray. Any molds like these, I believe this is probably for candy making. It's got to be silicone. As long as it's silicone, it can go in the oven. It's fair game for liquid Sculpey. Here's another fondant mold by Wilton. This is like a little box mold that you actually fill up, and it creates a heart-shaped box. So the molds that are available, they sometimes are packaged for resin, sometimes for liquid Sculpey. They come in basically these colors and styles. Just check the label, make sure they're silicone, and then they're fair game to use. Some molds are polished. And what I mean, you can see here in this heart-shaped ice cube tray, you can see how shiny those cavities are for the hearts. If it's a shiny mold like that and you put liquid Sculpey in there, the piece that comes out is also going to be shiny because that's an ultra smooth polished surface. So that might be something that you want to look at too before you buy molds to experiment with. All right, so next let's take a look at molding, and this is a Sculpey mold. It makes this beautiful lace piece, and I'm going to start at the end, which is demolding. This piece has already been baked. This is our lace piece, and to demold, all you do is flex the edge of the mold and pull the piece out. Now I have an empty mold that I can show you how to fill it. But I do want to talk about one little trick here. Every once in a while, you might get a little bit heavy-handed with your liquid, and you might end up with little bitty extra tidbits. And what I like to do is just go in here with some sharp craft scissors and trim those little bits off the edges and make sure it's really nice and clean. The other thing I want you to see about this is a liquid Sculpey piece that I just demolded, and look how completely flexible it is. And it's super strong. It's not stretchy, but it is quite strong. And this is the pearl, this is peacock pearl, and this is the flat red or matte red, plain red. So I just want you to see the differences in those. So I want to start with a thin mold. This is a Sculpey lace mold, and I'm going to show you how to fill it. These thin molds that Sculpey produces come with a little squeegee in the kit. And so it's a very easy to fill. So I think I'll just grab some of my garnet metallic, and I'll show you a couple different ways to do this. So this has already been stirred. And what I do is I generally will just put a lot of this on here and then just kind of see how far it goes. So what you want to do is fill all that cavity. Now, if you are the type of person that likes to get their hands dirty and just get in there and really work, it's fair game to use your finger. And as I'm swirling around here and using my finger, I can see where there might be little openings that need more liquid pushed into it. And I might actually use my finger sort of like a squeegee to drag liquid into that area. So that's one way to do it. I always keep paper towels and baby wipes on hand to clean my tools and to clean my fingers. Another way to fill a thin mold like this is to use the squeegee that's included. And you can start by just dragging it back and forth, gathering up some of that excess liquid on the squeegee itself, and then moving it around with the edge of the squeegee until all the little cracks and crevices and details are filled. The squeegee is also really nice for cleaning the excess off the flat areas along the margins of the mold. So you just want to do that until, I would just keep going until it's completely full, and then you would bake it following the baking instructions, which are on the label and also on our website, sculpey.com. You always want to practice good, accurate time and temperature for baking so that you get absolutely the strongest piece possible. So that mold, after I filled in there, would be ready to go right into the oven. You could also fill just part of the mold and use sections of it, depending on what your design and your style is. Here are some samples of this. We also have the lace mold and we have the mandala mold. And here's some samples of mandalas that are also come in a thin mold like this. And here's a little sample of how you can use the mandalas like in a mixed media type situation to create. This is glued onto a paper box. So the mandalas are super useful. A lot of people like to use this piece as an earring because it's super lightweight and very flexible. It's hardly any weight on the ear. So there's lots of great projects on our Sculpey.com website that show you how to use these molds and inspirations for what to use them with. So I'm going to set this mold aside. It would be ready to go in the oven, and I already showed you how to demold it. Next, let's take a look at filling a little bit thicker mold. So this is our jewelry mold that Sculpey designed. And it's really cool because each of the shapes in the mold has this post already built in. And so what that does is it gives you a pre-made hole. When you make jewelry, you need to have a little hole up here for assembling it later into like earrings or pendants. So that little post is already built into the mold so that you don't have to drill a hole in it later. Also, as I'm flexing it here for the camera, you can see that this is a polished mold. And so that means that as the pieces come out, they are going to have that nice shine. If you're using the downside as the front, then it's going to have that nice shine. So let me show you some different methods for filling this type of a mold. The first method I want to look at is called marbling. And that would be, I'm going to use this shape right here to do some marbling. Let me make sure I'm in the camera. And I want to show you another inspiration. These are also marbled. And let me show you how I did that. So first, this is already stirred. This is peacock pearl, and this is white. And I'm going to open these full up because I'm using them to fill molds. And what I like to do is just push the tip. I push the tip of the, you can't see that very well. I push the tip of my bottle right up next to that post and actually kind of lean it over. And when you do that, you kind of agitate that little post and it kind of helps the liquid to spread around it. You want to make sure that little post is completely surrounded by your liquid so that it has a really strong hole from which to make your earrings later. And now all I'm going to do is open up my white and I'm going to squirt this right next to it. And this is where having your liquids be similar in thickness and consistency is important, because as you're doing a technique like this, the liquids work well together if they're kind of similar in thickness. Now I'm doing another stripe of white and another stripe of peacock pearl. And then another stripe of white. And so really this just looks like a lot of stripes, but I'm going to show you how to marble it. Now at this point, the mold isn't completely full. I don't have it filled to level. It's still down lower. So depending if you want your earrings as thick as the mold, you are going to need to go back and add a little bit more to bring these up to level. And so what I'm doing is I'm adding peacock pearl to peacock pearl, and I'm adding white to white. And you want to kind of get that up to level. Okay. Then when your mold is filled just about to level, what you want to do is tap this on the work surface. So I don't know if you've ever made chocolates and filled like chocolate molds with chocolate, and you'd always tap, 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 tap. Well, that's a really good practice for making sure that the liquid is sitting down in there. Next, I'm going to take a needle tool, and this is the Sculpey needle tool that comes in our clay tools starter set. If you don't have this, you could use a toothpick. And I'm going to dip into my peacock pearl up here at the top, and then I'm going to drag a series of lines back and forth through here, marbling the colors together. I'm not going to lift the tip out until I'm completely done, and I want to have a paper towel on hand to catch my drip when it comes out. So I've dipped in all the way to the bottom. And I'm not scratching the bottom because I don't want to scratch that polished surface, but I'm just going to go back and forth through my liquids, creating a marvelous marble. And then I'm going to bring my needle tip right out and wipe that off. And so now I have this beautiful marbled pattern. Now here's what's interesting about this pattern. This is one that I've already made as a sample. When you flip it over, mostly what you see are those stripes. And for this pattern, which is the marbled one, I actually like to use the back of the piece. So I want to make sure that the mold is filled up completely full so that I have a nice thick piece that I'm dealing with. So sometimes the technique I'm showing you looks better from the back, and sometimes it's going to look better from the front. And I'll point that out as we go. Next, I'm just going to take this little flat tool here, and I'm going to clean up this edge where I actually let some of the liquid kind of slop over the side. And I'm just going to clean that up now so I don't have to deal with it later. All right, that is a marbling technique that's shown here and here. And I love that technique. It's very random and free-flowing. And we're just going to fill up this whole mold with different techniques. So next, I'll go to this shape. And what I have created for that shape is sort of, I have our navy metallic on the top, and then this bottom color is actually clear with some purple glitter in it. So let me show you how I did that. So I'm going to start with, first I'm going to bring my clear back in and make sure I've finished stirring it, because I'm not sure that I did. So just giving a few more revolutions here with my clear, because that's going in the bottom. All right. After I stir, I try really hard to get as much of the product right back in the bottle as possible because I don't want to waste it. So I'm just taking my time to mop off my knitting needle and get it back in there. So Jen, how are we doing? We have any puzzling questions that need answered yet, or we're doing okay?
Yeah, there is one question. I was gonna wait till you had a good stopping point.
Oh, okay.
How does liquid Sculpey differ from resin?
Ooh, good question. Okay. Liquid Sculpey differs from resin in a lot of ways because I share my art studio at home with a resin artist, my daughter. So we do a lot of comparing. And I would say one way that Liquid Sculpey differs is in the time constraint. So Liquid Sculpey, once your mold is filled, it goes in your home oven and cures at 275 in 30 minutes. And that is super fast compared to most resin, which has to like go overnight. Another way that they really vary is in mixing. Most resin has to be mixed, one part to one part, and Liquid Sculpey is ready to use right out of the bottle. Also, once you mix up resin, you need to use it all right away, and Liquid Sculpey is good to go as long as you just put the cap back on. So those are some basic ways that they differ. I'm sure there's lots and lots more. Okay, so what I did was I marked off the top with that navy metallic. Now I'm going to mark off the bottom area with this clear. And what I mean by that is I'm not filling this to level. I'm just telling the clear how much space I want it to take and the navy how much space I want it to take. So I'm kind of going with like a half and half look. Now, what I like to do is I like to mix my glitter right there on site. And what I mean is I'm not going to, if I wanted to, I could take a little silicone cup and I could mix up the clear and the glitter in there and then transfer it. But if I'm just doing very small projects like this, I kind of like to just mix my glitter right in the place, and then I'm not mixing any more product than I actually need. So this is a little packet of purple glitter. And what I do, and this is kind of weird, but it works really well, is I get the tip of my knitting needle wet with the clear, and then I go right in here in the glitter and pick up glitter on that wet tip. And then I just dance around in here with the, with the tip of the needle tool, mixing that glitter in. And then I can go back and get more glitter. And I can just keep adding glitter to my heart's content. If you want it super saturated, you just want to add more glitter. And if you don't want it so saturated, you could stop now. And this is a place where you might want to run some tests, make a little, bobble in your home oven and see how much glitter you want. And then I'm just going to wipe that excess glitter off the edge of my knitting needle. And then I'm going to stir it right back in. So at this point, the depth of this mold is only about half full. And so what I want to do now is fill it all the way up to level. And so I'm going to make sure and put more clear over my glitter area. And it might make it look like my glitter's going away, but it's not. It's still there, and this is clear, so the glitter is going to show. And then I'll go back over this top portion with the navy metallic. And I did make sure when I first filled this mold, I went around that post first and made sure that I had a really good strong post hole going. All right. And then just like we did over here for the swirly one, I want to pick up my mold and really drop it and let air bubbles rise to the surface.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about baking? Deb has some concerns or questions about it being toxic. Can she bake in her own oven?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some questions about, does glitter change the time of baking it?
Okay. So the easiest answer is no, glitter doesn't change the time of baking. Neither does alcohol ink or any inclusion that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a lot of inclusions, and inclusion is just something we add in. None of those change the baking time or temperature of the liquid. And Liquid Sculpey, like all of our products, is completely non-toxic. You do want to be careful not to burn it, but you don't want to ever burn, you know, any craft material. So you just pay close time and temperature, close to your time and temperature as that's specified by the manufacturer. And you always want to follow that as closely as you can, because that gives you the best product. So it's non-toxic. Jen, is it fair to say 14 and up for liquid Sculpey, or yeah, 14 and up is what we say for liquid Sculpey based on, you know, how it is to use it. And it's non-toxic and it's completely safe to use in your home oven. I do it every week. Now I do have a dedicated oven in my studio, but that's just because it's right there handy. I always keep it on the same temperature all the time. I don't let that oven vary in temperature. I always keep it the same. I check it every time, but that way I know that I'm always accurately baking and not jumping back and forth between crafts and frozen pizza. All right, so you see me snipping away at this. Earlier, I'll show you how I demolded these. You just flex the mold and pop these out. And I always check for little rough places where I might have gotten a little sloppy, and then I trim those off with scissors, real sharp scissors. So, okay. And so this is the same as the thin mold. You just flex the mold and pop them out. All right. Okay, so we've done two techniques, marbling and the glitter inclusion. Next, let's take a look at color blocking, and that would be like this style. I keep getting too far away because I'm not paying attention where my camera is. Here's another color blocking style right here. And here's yet another color blocking style. So let's talk about color blocking and how to do that in the mold. I need to straighten these out because these earrings are so pretty and I want to make sure they look good for you.
Hey, Amy,
yes.
Can you use electric conventional ovens?
Yes. The key to using any oven, I use my home kitchen oven is electric. And so is my craft oven that I have in my studio. They're both electric. And the key to it is to just being able to trust your oven. So what you need to do is put an oven thermometer in there and understand that it's accurate. Accuracy is so key for baking any craft item in a home oven. You need to make sure it's very accurate. And so spending time with an oven thermometer and making sure you check it periodically, that's super important for knowing that you can trust your oven. All right, so I just filled the top area right around the post with the garnet metallic. And next I'm going to map out an area that I want to be black. I'm just going to put a black stripe. And then I'm going to put some gold at the bottom. And this is how I'm doing a color blocking technique. And these are already stirred. So now I'm going to go ahead and tap this, and you might see my gold and my black and my garnet metallic getting kind of wonky, but I applied them straight to the bottom of the mold. And so they will be pretty straight to the bottom of the mold, even though the back that we're looking at is a little bit wonky. So I'm going to go ahead and tap this. And then I'm going to backfill with each color on color. So this, putting more garnet metallic on top of the garnet, putting more black on top of black, and putting more gold on top of gold. And I'm going to tap it again. And I want you to know that if you see a stubborn bubble like this one right here, I don't know that you can see it, but I've got this really sharp needle tool. Or remember, again, if you don't have the needle tool, you can use a toothpick and just go in there and poke that bubble and make sure that they're gone. As they rise to the surface, you know, you can be sure they're gone. Here's another valuable point. See how the navy metallic and the clear look like they're getting really murky right here? That's really only happening on the open side of the mold. If you would, in this process, the bottom side is going to be the front of the earring, and you can see that these have a pretty solid line between the navy and and the clear with glitter. But if you turn them over, they look a bit more murky. And so don't worry about that. You'll figure that out as you go. So there's a color blocking process that we've talked about. Let me get these out of the way so I can keep track of what I'm showing you. Next, let's take a look at color mixing and another type of inclusion. So I've got these really cute little pieces that I made, kind of a big one and two little ones. You'll notice in this mold, you have several big areas which are meant for making pendants, and then you have pairs of small ones which are meant for making a coordinating earring. If you want to use the larger ones as earrings, which I often do, you can always just fill the mold twice, bake it, demold it, and then do it again. So this is a cool color that I made out of alcohol ink. This is called Calabaza Orange, and I actually made it with our pearl. Our pearl liquid Sculpey is super pretty for color mixing. So I'm going to use a little cup, a little silicone cup, and I don't need a lot of this. I'm just going to put some in the bottom, and this has already been stirred. I just need enough to fill the top space of this big pendant shape and the top of these. So I'm just kind of guessing. That's about the size of a nickel, that little dollop there. Next, I'm just going to real carefully open my alcohol ink. And alcohol ink works really well to change the color of liquid Sculpey. And this pearl liquid Sculpey takes alcohol ink really nicely and makes a nice pearly new color. So I've just put one drop of alcohol ink in there with the pearl, and next I'm going to stir it completely up. So I obviously don't want to tint my entire bottle of pearl with alcohol ink because I want to keep the pearl fresh and original for other projects. That's one reason I'm using this silicone cup to do my color mixing, because I don't want to taint my whole bottle of pearl. So that's kind of a pretty pastel like sorbet orange. And I'm just mopping off the excess here on the edge in hopes of being able to use it again. And then I'll clean my tool with paper towel. Okay, next what I want to do is I want to stake my claim on what part of the mold is going to be that, you know, the sherbety color at the top. And here, I'm just holding this up so you can see what I did there. Okay, so I'm just going to take a tool. I'm going to take, I call this our scoop-ended tool. I've always called it that. I don't know that there's a better name for it. And I'm just going to go in here, and I kind of just use it like a little spoon and grab some of that. And I'm just going to put it right up there by that post. And I'm going to do that in the pendant shape. And I'm going to do that in each of these little earring shapes.
Amy, can you talk about painting liquid Sculpey after you bake it?
Painting it after you bake it?
People are, Deb wants to know if you can cure the pieces in the oven and then paint it.
Yes, of course you can. You could paint liquid Sculpey just like you could paint, you know, any oven baked clays like our Primo and Souffle and Sculpey 3. I prefer acrylic paints the most. You can paint over the top of any of our products with acrylic paint. And I like acrylic paint just because it dries so quickly and so completely. Also, acrylic paint can, like if you had a process where you want to layer something, you can always put dry acrylic paint back into the oven. So that's kind of a cool thing, since this is oven baked clay, to know that you can always put the acrylic paint in the oven as well, as long as the acrylic paint is dry. So since I scooped it out of that little cup, now what I'm going to do is take my needle tool and make sure it goes all the way around this little post area. And once you've told it to go that way, it'll kind of fill in around the post. It takes a little coaxing, and then all of a sudden it's like done for you. So just telling it to go all the way around that post with my little sherbet color. Okay. And then I'll clean my tool with paper towel. Next, I'm going to mark out the rest of that area with my clear again. I always read the label because the clear looks just like white when it's in the bottle. So I'm just going to demonstrate on this bigger piece. You would do the exact same thing on the small earring pieces. And so all I'm doing is filling in with a thin layer of clear. Now I'm not filling all the way up to level yet. I'm just making a clear layer. And I have these cute little inclusions. This is a cool kit that we got at Michael's. It's got all these different glitters and foils and metal pieces, and included in it were all these cute little fruit slices that are actually made of polymer clay. They're made pre-made overseas, I'm sure. And I'm just going to grab some of these and float them down here in this liquid area. And this is a fun way to use inclusions. And you can kind of layer them in here depending on what colors you want where. Now in this piece, the front is going to be the part that's down in the bottom of the mold. So I am kind of thinking about that as I layer these in. Like I might even layer some over others like that. Next, I'm going to take my tweezers and make sure those guys are sitting down in that clear layer, because that's also going to force out air bubbles from underneath them. And then once I've done that, and I would do the exact same thing to this little guys down here to make a pair of earrings like this. I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill up to level with the clear.
Hey, Amy, while
Yes.
you're working on that, can you talk a little bit? I know you're going to show something with clay and liquid later.
Yep.
But can you talk a little bit about if you're going to be using liquid Sculpey with clay, can you bake them together, or should you bake the clay first and then can you use like it as a glaze on top? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So any of those options is fair. Next, what you're going to see me doing is just making sure those little fruit slices don't float to the top. I'm just seeding them down into that clear liquid that I put in there. So to answer that question about using clear or using liquid Sculpey and oven baked polymer clay together, all of those are fair ways to do it. You can, for example, those little clay slices were already baked. Those little fruit slices, those were already baked. They didn't have to be though. I could have put raw fruit slices in there if I had a cane of fruit slices that I wanted to incorporate into the liquid Sculpey. It can go either way, and it doesn't really change the time and temperature of the baking, so long as you're using like Primo or Souffle with liquid Sculpey. Those all bake at 275 for 30 minutes. So that works out really well for those to all be used together. I'm also going to talk about later, trust me, I'm going to talk about how to use liquid Sculpey with a solid clay background, which is what these projects are. So I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later in the video. So did I answer that?
Yeah.
Jen? Okay. All right, we've got one more design I want to work out here, and that is the animal print. And I want to show you how that is done. And we're going to do that in this big open hoop. These are sort of a leopardy type of print. And the way I like to do that, the bottom area is going to be the front. So I'm going to address that first. And the first thing I'm going to do with my already stirred black is I'm going to put some random dots of black in here. But I don't want that to be enough black that they run together. I'm leaving spaces. Can you see how I put some black dots in there, but I left spaces between them? You'll see better when I add the amber. Then I'm going to take a blunt tool like my knitting needle, and I'm going to dip it in that black dot. And then I'm just going to use my knitting needle in sort of this tapping motion to really break up the edges of those dots so that they look more animal print-like. And even getting some of that black on the tip and putting it in areas where there was no liquid at all, so that I'm really making very, very random shapes with the black. Next, I'm going to go back in between with my amber translucent, and I got to figure out which one that is because it looks a lot like the gold. This is the one I thinned earlier, and I showed you how to thin it because I knew that it was way thicker than my black, and I want them to work really well together. So I thinned this one a little bit to be more like the black. And I'm going to start by putting this in the areas of the mold where there's no liquid at all, where there's no black. I'm just going to drip it in to those empty spaces just to make sure that I get some really, really solid amber areas, because the amber is translucent and I want to make sure it has its own quality of color there amongst the black. So I want to make sure it goes all the way down. And then I'm going to go back, and over my black areas, I'm going to put more black. I'm only putting black on the black. I'm not putting black on the amber translucent, because I don't want to dilute my amber translucent color. Okay. And I'm going to keep doing this until this mold is filled to level. So now I'm adding amber translucent to the amber translucent areas again. And then I'm going to do one more round of black to kind of get this up to level. Now on what's going to be the front of this design, we took our knitting needle and we tapped around in there to make little various points of black, so that you can see by this finished pair, those black areas are super random and very spot-like, not organized at all. And that is the key to making a really nice, like, leopard, or let me show you this one that I did. I'm just going to demold this one really quick. These turned out really nice. So they're super random. You can see I've got some little tiny dots here and some bigger dots. So keeping them as random as possible is important. And then if you want the back side to look a little more random, you could dip into the black and kind of make it not so neat looking. But don't taint your amber translucent areas too much, because you really do want them to hold their color. Okay. So you could go about filling this entire mold all at once. You could fill every cavity on here. You want to make sure it's all tapped. You can keep tapping between each process. And then we want to put it on this baking sheet for baking. Now, I want to show you something that I've learned as a tip. So what I have is just your standard baking tray, and I have this dish towel that I've got folded very neatly so that it makes a really flat, level pad. What you want to do is run some water and get this dish towel damp, and then squeeze all the water out of it that you possibly can, and lay it as flat as you possibly can on your baking tray. Now, it doesn't have to be this thick. It could just be one ply of towel thick, okay? And then you want to put your mold right on top of that damp towel, and then bake it just like you would, just like the baking instructions call for. Now, I learned this tip from people who bake cakes, because sometimes when people bake a cake, that the rim of the cake pan, it bakes so much faster than the middle of the cake, and the cake starts to hump up. It causes warping. And so really good bakers will put a damp liner around the edge of their baking pan. And so I translated that to this type of molding, because if you put this mold right on this very thin metal sheet, the bottom of that mold is going to heat up so much faster than the top. It's going to heat up enough faster to warp the mold. And then if the mold warps, which it's only gently, it's not very much, but if it warps at all, then your beautiful pieces warp as well. So I just translated this cake baking idea to liquid Sculpey baking, put down a damp towel, put this right on top, make sure it's nice and level, bake it for the time and temperature just like you would, and it will come out super flat, because it makes the baking time, or the baking of the entire mold, more even and steady and regular. So that's my baking tip for you. Now I just want to set some of this out of the way so that we can talk about some of our other techniques. Jen, you got something? No. Okay.
13 minutes.
Huh?
13 minutes.
13 minutes. Okay. In 13 minutes, we're going to tell you the whole rest of the story. Here I want to show you these are some other inclusions that we've done. And I'm looking for something white to put these against. This one is glitter and foil. This one is all metallic foils. These are all in the clear. This one is pepper, just table pepper. And then this one is like those beautiful little dried flowers that you can get at nail salons. Here's another kind of inclusions. This is just a bright gold glitter put in the bottom of the mold with clear on the top. This cool hair barrette has all kinds of foil glitters incorporated into the clear liquid Sculpey. We talked about this one being little polymer clay candies that were put in clear liquid. And this one is super cool. It kind of helps you make a little creative memory. This one has seashells embedded, and I actually put real sand down in this really dark place. I put the sand right in the clear liquid Sculpey, and then I put the seashells in, and it just held the seashells in place. And here's another sort of mixed media. This has got layers and layers of our different colors, then with some foil glitter to make like an agate look. This is a super mixed media marbled piece with lots and lots of beaded, glass beaded strands in the bracelet. So let me move those out of the way. And then we want to talk about making clings. Okay, so to make a cling is anything that is produced on glass and then it will stick to glass, just like a window cling. And that's what this is. In order to make these, all you need is a picture of what you want to make, and you put that under a piece of glass. And then what I like to do is I like to pick one of my really thick liquids to do my drawing with. And that's why earlier I said I don't want to change my pearl liquid Sculpey, because I might want to use it, you know, as it is for another project. So in this case, my pearl liquid Sculpey is like really thick. And so I'm going to use it to outline all my outlines of my cling. And so what you would do is use a thick liquid, and you would go around all your outlines first until you have the whole thing outlined. And in this case, it would be all these white lines. Then you would bake that and create this framework of white. And then you could go back in and add your black and add your red and add your yellow. And your white lines that are already baked would act as a dam to keep the yellow and the black and the red from mixing. They would stay right inside those white boundaries that you already created. Another way I want to talk about using clings is with other polymers. So for example, I took a piece of glass like this and drew a snowflake. So let's just say you would do something like this freehand, or not freehand. You could have a drawing of a snowflake beneath that you could trace. And I baked that. And then after it was baked, I peeled it off the glass and I just put it on a piece of navy Primo. And I just made sure that there was really good contact between the white liquid Sculpey snowflake and the Primo disc. Then that went back in the oven to cure the Primo. And now you have this solid piece. The white liquid Sculpey is completely bonded to the navy Primo. Another way to go about this would be if you had an unbaked navy disc, you could just draw the snowflake right on top. But maybe doing it on the glass first and transferring it might give you a little bit more success, especially since you could trace some snowflakes on there. This pendant piece was made by filling one of our molds that has this cool moon shape and this really cool star. I did a silver moon and then a gold star. And then I fashioned this background piece out of Galaxy Glitter Primo with some of our glow in the dark Primo. And I marbled those together to make like a night sky. And this was unbaked Primo. I put baked liquid Sculpey elements right on the top, and then I baked it again. So all of our Primo, souffle, liquid Sculpey, those can all endure multiple bakings. The same with these pieces. Those little clay pieces were already baked, and they can endure multiple bakings if you need to. As long as you keep your time and temperature accurate, it's all good. Okay, how many minutes, Jen?
8 minutes.
8 minutes, we got time. Okay, I want to also show you how to use liquid Sculpey as an antiquing medium. So it might be hard to tell, but this pattern on here is actually a pattern that I impressed by using little bitty cutters. I pushed the cutters into this background of Primo to make little indentions, and then I baked the dish. Okay, here's a more simpler one that I've done. This middle part is already antiqued with black liquid Sculpey, and I baked it. But I want to show you how I applied the black liquid Sculpey to this outer area. So I just put a little black liquid Sculpey, and then I really get in there with some hand pressure and fingertip pressure, and I massage that black liquid Sculpey all into all those little cracks and crevices. So it comes in really nicely as an antiquing medium. Any of our dark colors with Primo or Souffle or whatever you've made, the liquid Sculpey just makes such a great antiquing medium. Okay, now what we can do is take a clean paper towel, which I've got one right here. I'm going to clean my finger and I'm going to swipe the dish. I'm going to swipe away as much of this black as I can. And that's one thing I like about using liquid Sculpey as an antiquing medium, is that it doesn't stain so much. It's a little bit more oily than, say, acrylic paint, and so it wipes off really easily. And if I'm not happy, if I don't think it's wiped completely enough as I would like, I can always use a little bit of our clay softener and thinner, and I could just put a drop of that on my paper towel, just create a little damp spot, and then go back in there, and it wipes everything off the surface of the dish as well, making my turquoise color completely stand out like it did fresh and new again. So this would go back in the oven again, and it would be baked yet one more time to cure the liquid Sculpey that I used as an antiquing medium. And here are some cool pieces that I antiqued using black liquid Sculpey. Okay, I want to show you another thing. So this is a piece, this is sort of supposed to look like agate, and it was used in an agate type coaster. And you can just see how ultra shiny this one is. That's because when I had the piece all done, and this was done with liquid Sculpey, this is navy metallic, this is translucent turquoise, white, gold, peacock pearl, and out here I've got clear with foil glitter embedded in it. Then when it was all done, I went over the whole thing with a thin layer of clear liquid Sculpey. And the way that you could do that is to just, you'd have it all baked, and then you could apply some thin areas of clear liquid, just like that. And then you could mop it around with your finger to make sure it's really spread well. You bake that again. But then to get your clear liquid Sculpey to become ultra clear and ultra shiny, you could hit this with a heat gun. And I use like an industrial home improvement store heat gun. I get it up to 450 or 500 degrees. I would hold it over the baked piece, going back and forth until the piece just completely shines. And then I would turn the heat off, and I would know that the clear is as clear as it's going to get, and the shine is as shiny as it's going to be. And you can really get some intense shine from using our clear liquid Sculpey as a glaze. Okay, how much time do I have now, Jen?
4 minutes.
Okay, I want to show you one more trick for finishing pieces that don't have a hole. So one way that you can do this is to drill a hole. This is a little agate piece that I put in one. We have a little tiny mold that makes agate shapes, but there's no hole in it. And so what you can do is just decide where you want the hole, and a Dremel tool is an easy way to do that. I just have my smallest bit. This is about a 1/16. I'll turn the drill on. I'm using a wood block to protect my wood work surface. And then just drill right through it. And now I've got a beautiful little neat hole that I can add a jump ring to to turn this into a pendant. Another way that you can change things into jewelry pieces that don't have holes. This is a pair of feather earrings that I made from our Whimsy mold. They're right here. And so I just used navy metallic and peacock pearl and pearl. And I actually dropped those in there and then smeared them with my finger. And so what I want to do next is poke a pilot hole with my needle tool. So I'm going to go up here to the top. I'm going to hold this, anchor it really well, and see, I just push that needle tool all the way through. You can either use that as your jump ring hole, or you can apply pinch bails. Pinch bails are a really great way to finish liquid pieces. A pinch bail has little prongs that are very sharp. And what I would do is just insert those prongs into that pilot hole that I made. And then I would clamp down on it with a pair of pliers and pinch it closed. And now I have this beautiful metal finding that allows me to add jump rings and ear wires or a pendant piece, whatever I want for that. So Jen, do you have any more burning questions?
Can you talk about cleaning your hands after using liquid Sculpey?
Yep, after I use liquid Sculpey, I use either a baby wipe or paper towel. I get as much of that off as I possibly can. Then I just wash with soap and water to get my hands completely clean. Now, if you have silicone cups, what I would do with this beautiful sherbet color I made, I would get as much of that out of there as I possibly can and make stuff with it and bake that. And then when it's completely as clean as I can get it, scraping it out with my tools, I would put the whole silicone cup right in the oven, bake it, and I can peel any residual liquid Sculpey back out of the cup, and the cup is good to be reused again. So that's how I take care of my silicone pieces. Anything else, Jen? Anything else? We did not get to our pouring technique, but this is a project that we have on Sculpey.com, correct, Jen?
Yes, yes.
This is where you layer lots of colors of liquid Sculpey in a silicone cup, like say this one. You would layer your colors in there and then basically pour them into like a wooden tray like this one is, or you know, any other mold that you have is fair game for pouring it in, and then bake that. And you have this beautiful sort of a paint pour look that we've borrowed from acrylic paint artists.
Can you talk about how long the like when you mix a color, how long it's good for? Like, can you let it sit for a couple weeks?
Yeah, you can let it
right away?
You can let your colors, your mixed colors, sit indefinitely. If I pour my clear all out into a little cup, it can sit indefinitely. I just want to keep it clean and clear of dust and debris and dirt. I'll just keep that lightly covered so that dirt and dust can't get in there, and it will stay good for a long, long, long time. And if it seems to be dried out a bit, you can just thin it again with our thinner and softener.
Do you cover it?
Yes, I cover it lightly. I sure do. I cover it. Yep. Cover it lightly. Mm-hmm.
We're out of time, but one quick question. Can you use it as a coaster, liquid Sculpey?
Yep. Yep. Just like this coaster set that I made 4 of these, and it's completely waterproof. You can use these as coasters. Makes a really beautiful gift item. So if there's nothing else, I need to tell you, thanks for coming. Please, if you post to social media, use the hashtag Sculpey, hashtag Make It With Michaels, and hashtag Michaels Classes, so that we can find your creations on social media as well as you're finding ours. So thanks for joining me. I hope to see you. We've got another class coming up in July.
2 classes.
Oh, 2 classes in July. Look for those on the Michaels website. We'd love to have you sign up and join us again. Thank you.